The New Orleans Saints have made a roster move, so we got to take a look at the updated depth chart. Welcome into Saints Now by Chat Sports. As always, I'm your host, Trizzy Trace Gerard. Second video of the day. Go check out the first one if you want to get the latest on the New Orleans Saints. But we got some roster updates to dive into. DPJ has signed a one-year contract after a successful workout at rookie minicamp. So welcome into New Orleans to the 26-year-old wide receiver who, in my opinion, is actually going to be a pretty fun addition. Who's a sixth-round pick out of Michigan back in 2020 by the Cleveland Browns. He was then traded to Detroit in 2023, and throughout his time in Detroit in the 2023 season when he was with both teams, to be honest, not a lot of production. Just really didn't do a ton, but for what it's worth, he does offer some special teams ability, and he is a player that in 2023 was very underwhelming. However, in 2022, this was a guy who had over 800 yards and 3 touchdowns. And in 2021, 3 touchdowns, almost 18 yards per catch. Over the course of his career, 304 yards. Over the course of his career. In 2020, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns. And over the course of his career, has been a somewhat reliable target. 13 receptions, 155 yards last year. Again, though, 6'2", 204 pounds. And a big thing for me, he's only 26 years old. So I got to say, that makes me really excited. 6'2" is actually on the higher end of the size chart of the wide receivers in New Orleans. Still not quite over the hump of 6'2", but, for what it's worth, he is a bigger bodied player. He's not less than 6 foot, which Lopez, I guess that's a win in itself, whatever. But let's take an updated look at the wide receiver group because we know Chris Olave, he's wide receiver 1. Brandon Cooks, he likely could be in the conversation of wide receiver 2, / he's going to be a guy who gets a lot of run. Rashid Shaheed, he's going to get a lot of attention this year as well, but I'm looking for Bub Means to take a big leap in year 2. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I do believe, has the ability to make the roster this year. You have Moochie Dixon and Chris Tyree as undrafted free agents. You brought back Dante Pettis. Mason Tipton was a UDFA last year out of Yale. Cedric Wilson, Kevin Austin Jr., a couple more players that I think could have the ability to make the roster if things all work out for him. Now, when it comes to DPJ, I do think that this is a player Kellen Moore's excited to have on his offense, and I do think that he is a player that should be at least partially used, if that makes sense, in Kellen Moore's offense. Let me explain here in just a second, but I want to kick it to the Saints head coach here because this kind of gives you an inside look at what he thinks about his newest wide receiver. It was awesome to see DPJ out there talking about rookie minicamp. He's been a really productive player. Just a couple of years ago, he had a ton of catches and a ton of production for Cleveland. He's talking about that 2022 season with 90-plus catches and over 800 yards. He's certainly a guy, when you went through the draft process, he was highly thought of. You want to keep an eye on those guys as you kind of go through this journey and give them a chance to compete. I thought he went out there and did an excellent job today, which is why he ultimately ended up making the roster in New Orleans. Rookie minicamp did not end today by any means, but that's just, what Kellen Moore said the other day. Now we're talking about it because DPJ is officially a member of the Black and Gold. And, I do think when it comes to the wide receiver position, that is still a spot that could use a little bit of extra juice. Total transparency. I think you could look to add a player like a Keenan Allen or an Amari Cooper. Gabe Davis, he's visiting with San Francisco. Maybe that's a guy that you could go and take a look at. But I also will say this. Maybe there's another guy that the Saints could potentially trade for. And coming up, I'm going to talk about a 6'4" wide receiver the Saints could potentially trade to bring to New Orleans because I think it actually might make some sense. But really quickly, I got to just tell you, for what it's worth, I love y'all. The Falcons Today host, Matthew Peterson, one of my dear friends. I love the guy. But he just, today, he turned in his 2 weeks notice. He quit. I love the guy. I'm not here to hound him for doing other new adventures and other new things, but I am here to tell you, who isn't quitting is the host of Saints Now. Me. Falcons host quits. Saints host isn't quitting. Jordan Belfort. Y'all know what he says. I'm not effing leaving. And I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. The show goes on, so be sure to subscribe to Saints Now by Chat Sports. We're on the road to 50K subscribers. So if you want daily content by Saints fans for Saints fans, and every chance we get, we take a shot at the Atlanta Falcons. Hit that sub button today. Matthew Peterson, I hope you know I love you. No shade towards you. No shade to your new adventures. I just, had to throw some shade to the team you covered here at Chat Sports. One of them, at least. Now let's talk Christian Watson. Yeah, that's an interesting one. That's certainly one that might ruffle a little bit of feathers. 6'4", 208 pounds. Now, let me just say this. Coming out of North Dakota State, he is a player that has had flashes throughout his career. But the big story along Christian Watson's tenure in the National Football League has been that he's battled various injuries. And we're going to go through the entire injury history here. 8 different injuries that had sidelined him for at least some time. And for what it's worth, right now, he's actually recovering from an ACL tear he suffered in the last week of the 2024 season. So when it comes to a return timeline, maybe December. His dad tweeted out early in January that it should be next January. I don't know. Point being, it's going to be a while before he's healthy and he's ready to go. He is entering the final year of his rookie contract, and for what it's worth, the Packers wide receiver room is starting to get a little crowded, especially after breaking the streak of 20-plus years not drafting receiver in round 1. The Packers brought in Matthew Golden in round 1, and I think that that's exactly who they're looking to replace Christian Watson with. Now, let's go back in time and look at the injury history because it is extensive and it is something that's at least worth, mentioning. Unspecified knee tear in 2022. He pulled his hamstring and he missed a few games, and then in concussion a couple weeks later, he missed 2 games. And then the following season, 3 games right at the beginning of the year. And then in December, he missed 5 games in 2023. And then in 2024 last season, you missed 1 game early, you missed 1 game with the knee bruise, and then you tear your ACL in the final game of the season. Now, again, the best ability is availability. That is no new information. That is common knowledge. That is the first and foremost important thing when it comes to how the Saints should consider players with an injury history. But I also think that Christian Watson is a player that could be pretty good to have on the New Orleans Saints roster. In 2022, a second-round pick, 34th overall. He's only 26 years old. Maybe this is a good addition. And look, I also want to say when it comes to Christian Watson, he actually spoke himself about the injury. And for what it's worth, I think it's actually pretty good news. And he recently said this. Our host, Joey Peterson of the Packers Report, he already broke this down in full detail. If you want to learn more about Christian Watson, I highly encourage you to check out my guy, Joey P. He does some great work for our Ravens coverage and our Packers coverage. But he said that recovery is going really well. I'm in a good spot, just keeping the mentality there, just working. I've got a couple more months ahead of me, but I'll keep attacking every day. I'm at a really good spot. And I want to just say this. I don't think that a couple months ahead of me, I don't think that it means he's going to be healthy in a couple months. That's not that at all. I think he just has a couple more months in terms of some of this rehab and stuff like that he has to go through, and then he can really start pushing it and going in full speed and seeing how he can try to get back on the field. Like, I don't think he's going to be healthy in a couple months. I think this is going to be, a year-long recovery, if not maybe a little bit more, hopefully a little bit less, but we'll have to see. Now, in terms of a trade for the right price, I could be intrigued. Again, I don't love it. I don't hate it. I certainly don't hate it, actually. I think this actually could be an interesting trade. I'm intrigued, not sold. I want to say that first. I'm intrigued because look at the statistics for this guy. I mean, over the course of his career, almost 100 catches, 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 17 yards per catch. Literally the only thing with him is that he can't stay on the field. He gets catches. He averages a lot of yards per catch. He scores touchdowns. The production is solid. So for the right price, I could be intrigued. That being said, the injury history is something that is concerning to me. So in terms of this conversation for Christian Watson and potentially coming to New Orleans, I say we just revisit this a little bit closer to the trade deadline. I don't want to force a trade. I don't want to go and buy and go and sell the farm to, I wouldn't have to sell the farm. But I don't want to have to go and invest a lot of prime draft capital in a player that may not even be ready to roll, who probably will not be ready to roll week 1. I would rather revisit this at the trade deadline, see if he can play, see if he's close to being available. And after that, sure, if the medicals check out, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it, and let's see what we can cook up. But until then, I think we just wait to the trade deadline, and then from there we can make this whole thing happen. Now, I want to just gauge your interest. Do we talk about this topic again? Scale it for me 1 to 100. How interested are you in Christian Watson? 1 meaning not interested at all. 100 meaning you need him in some black and gold. Saints fans, thank you so much for tuning into today's video. We got more roster news that we're going to break down tomorrow. I'm just waiting to see the moves become official. We're going to break it down bright and early for you. And then we got some trade rumors tomorrow evening, so I hope you guys are excited. I hope you guys tune into the content, and I hope you're subscribed. Join the Golden Gang. Y'all stay golden. We'll see you next time.